Absolute power corrupts absolutely in the spine of night. A Shudder exclusive written and directed by Philip Gillott and Morgan Gale King. This is Morgan's feature film debut. Philip has directed The Bleeding House as well as They Remain. And this is an ultra-violent animated fantasy epic in the vein of the 1981 classic Heavy Metal as well as the 1970s version of The Hobbit. If you've seen both of those, you get the idea on what animation style you're in for. And oh boy, is it ultra-violent. It certainly leans into that ultra-violence. It is going to be something that is definitely going to impress some people, turn some other people off, and just make you go, wow, they can really do some impressive stuff with animation. But since it is in the vein of Heavy Metal and The Hobbit, it is very retro. Very, very retro. So that's going to turn some people off. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to be like, nah, this ain't for me. But maybe the voice cast will impress you. Richard E. Grant, Lucy Lawless, Betty Gabriel, Patton Oswalt, Joe Manganiello, and Jordan Douglas Smith as the titular villain. And actually, Jordan Douglas Smith steals the fucking show here. And in this, there is a certain plant called the Bloom that has mysterious powers. And if used for good, you can use it for witchcraft, you can use it for healing, you can use it for a bunch of stuff and a bunch of good stuff and help out your village and help out, people that you love and care for and everything, and use the powers for good. Or in the case of some people, you could use it for evil and some really fucked up shit can happen and a bunch of bodies can get split open and destroyed and you can become a god. So I wasn't sure how to take this movie at first. In fact, I was all prepared to hate it just based solely on the first couple minutes because I was like, wow, this is really jarring. What the hell's going on? But very, very quickly, the movie absorbed me and got me into it. And I'm just going to say this is one of my favorite movies of the year, one of my favorite movies of the last 5 years. This turned out to be one of the best goddamn movies. This was really, really, really damn good. If you can get past the fact that it has a retro animation style, and it's unique, and that it takes a bit to get into the story. While the movie's only about 93 minutes, it certainly does take a bit to get going, but it is really, really goddamn good. Philip and Morgan, they did a great, which sounds like an insurance firm now that I think about it, wording it that way. They craft a tremendous goddamn story, and this has not necessarily a troubled production, but a small production. There is a maximum of 4 animators at a time. This movie took 7 years to complete. This is a fucking labor of love. And they put a lot of passion, energy, and tremendous thought into this project. And once again, absorbing, tremendously well done. Great voice acting. Lucy Lawless, I would, and you would too, is great in this and proves that Xena was always better than Hercules. Because let's be honest, Lucy Lawless actually has a brain. Kevin Sorbo does not. Back to this though. What it basically involves is Lucy Lawless's character, Tizod, who is the last of a swamp village where she is going up to this mountain to talk to the Guardian, voiced by Richard E. Grant, who is guarding this last bloom. And it turns out she has a little bit of bloom on her. Well, how did this come to be? She tells him the story. So a lot of this is told in flashbacks, and then we get something, wrapped up at the end. And I'll get into spoilers here in a little bit. But a lot of it's told in flashbacks. We find out that Tizod is taken from her village after practicing some magic with various, shawl of stuff on her, of this bloom on her chest. It's like all wrapped around everything. And also a lot of nudity. There's a lot of nudity, male and female, and a lot of freaking violence. If you are not into seeing animated violence and animated titties and dickies and stuff like that, this isn't for you. But then again, if you didn't like heavy metal, you're probably not going to like this. And if you didn't care for the retro feel of The Hobbit, you're not going to really care for this. What's nice about this, though, it doesn't hold back on, the viciousness. It really tells a bleak, fucked up, story of like this bleak landscape, a lot of violent shit happening, and how people are just bound, determined, basically to survive. And there are some people that are purely fucking evil. So Tiza is taken from her village. She's taken to the home of a lord, voiced by Patton Oswalt, who is just having a great goddamn time voicing this. And from there, we get something that happens. There's this Gal Shore that comes in, Jordan Douglas Smith, and he's a scholar that is trying to basically, make sure that Tizod is okay. But then something happens where basically this bloom shawl gets stolen from her. And she ends up basically, she ends up in a not good place, shall we say. And it turns out that Gal Sur got really, really just, fucked up in the head thinking, hey, I'll just take this grand, this magical thing that I found, this magical entity, and I will make it my own, and I will find a way to become the god I always wanted to be. Because again, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And then from there, we find out more about Tizad's story, how this happened, how did she came to be on the mountain, how Galsur continues to, like, just get more and more fucked up in the head. It's like a Ra's al Ghul, except without the really hot daughter. If you remember the Batman animated series, I mean, come on, let's be perfectly honest. They drew her intentionally like that to make kids at the time my age think, I'm feeling weird things about animated characters. In the case of this one, though, we find out in various villages there are people that are tired of Galsur having this power, and they want to take him down. They want to find a way to bring peace to the land. But what is the point of the bloom? Why does the bloom exist? We find out more about that here. It has some weird, backstory and everything, but it also makes sense. The way the story is told, as far as the animation style and as far as like the retroness of it, again, some of it is rough, very rough, in fact. I'm not saying it's unpolished, but just because of the small production staff, it will take a non-judgmental eye, like, okay, I totally understand why they're doing this. The story, the richness of the story and the performances is really where you can sink your teeth into it. However, there are some good moments as far as the animation. Some good spells, some good other stuff, some good battles, the splitting of the bodies, the decapitations, the sound effects, the squish of it. Really, really, really good shit. I mean, really incredible shit. The animation is very well done. The animation staff, whoever they were, great talent. I don't know if they had much experience doing animation before this. They knocked it out of the goddamn park with this. Shudder found a fucking gold mine with this. This is really, really fucking good. I am going to get into spoilers here in a little bit, but as far as an epic story, it's well told, and it makes sense, and it shows that, no, not everybody is perfect, but boy, it has to take the right person to use a power like this for any kind of good, because if it falls into the wrong hands, well, some really, really fucked up shit's going to happen. So yeah, it's streaming on Shudder if you want to check it out. It is 100% worth it. Get ready, give it time, and it will absolutely absorb you. Now, I can understand why some people might not like this. Again, in the first couple minutes, I wasn't so sure about it, but it got me, and it got me hooked, and it's one of my favorite movies of the year. Now we're going to get into spoilers. These won't take too long, though. Spoilers. So if you're still here, we're in spoilers. So she's talking to the Guardian. This Guardian, it turns out, Richard E. Grant, is one of many Guardians that has been up there protecting this bloom. And this bloom is in this giant skull cave. Well, why is it in a giant skull cave? Well, it turns out that the bloom comes from the mouth of a god, the son of a god. Well, actually, it's basically it's kind of weird how they throw this exposition in, like, last minute. It turns out that there was a battle between gods, and one got decapitated, and his head, rained light and dark in the sky. And then there were sons of gods that were on earth, and they ruled and they destroyed man, and they just made man feel terrible. And then there was Seir, the first king of man, that rose up and led a army against all these gods and killing them. And the last god that got killed had all these blooms in his mouth, and that's where these blooms have been found, and where they've been, and how this power has been used by man for good, bad, and indifferent, and how Seir saw all this stuff and basically was driven mad. And then various guardians have come up, including this particular guardian, Richard E. Grant, and he is tired. He's kind of like an animated version of the the guard that was in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, if you remember that. He had like the one shot to get with the sword, and if he didn't, he had to sit down because he was like 700 fucking years old. So you're wondering though, how did now if Tizad had all this, how did that come to be, and how was she up on this mountain trying to talk to the Guardian, and why did she not have much with her? It turns out this Galsur took that stuff from her and basically got all insane and was in the basement of these scholars, these insane scholars, including Uruk. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Some of these names are a little bit weird. There's Betty Gabriel Faye Agura, who is a scholar that wants to use the power for good. Hey, let's use our knowledge. Let's teach these people. Let's give them food because villages are starving while the rich get richer and the poor die. So really kind of true to life right now, in all honesty. Nothing's really changed in 700 whatever years, or however many years this has been. They're never specific on the exact year, but it's since it's might and magic and all this stuff, it's seemingly after the Black Plague. But whatever alternate universe this is in, the whole point is this gets this just shows how Gul Sur just gets more and more messed up. Finally, there's this Egyptian village where they basically, it's Egyptian type, and they get on this airship, this flaming airship that seemingly is just something that was created. It sends flames down to destroy cities quickly. Gul Sur's leading his armies, but now he's retreated back to the village of Pyre, Pyr, that is, since he has taken it over after possessing and killing, various people and leading an army that wants to destroy. It's kind of like Alexander the Great if he was a magician and also bald and animated. Okay, so it's a lot better than the movie Alexander that Oliver Stone did. And I've seen various cuts of it, and none of them are very good. And these three soldiers come in. Well, it actually turns out just to be one remaining soldier that uses this the bloom orb thing to control this ship. And she kind of gets, a hint of the power and ends up destroying Gul Sur, or is seemingly destroying Gul Sur. Actually destroys the goddamn temple, but he's somehow still alive. Tizad, meanwhile, has finished telling the story, and it turns out that she got killed and got absorbed into this particular swamp after... Well, she earlier burned the Lord Patton Oswalt's face off and then drowned him in a swamp and then got stabbed and got her stuff stolen. And she has this last bloom, and she's going to use it, the last visage of this bloom, she's going to use it to destroy Gul Sur. And then she does. Raises these guardians from the dead, and these guardians end up pulling him apart. They split him apart. She takes out his heart and points it to the sky and says, fear the night and everything. And then that's it. He dies, and the bloom is done. The bloom is off the rose, ladies and gentlemen. And then it just seemingly ends. Again, the movie is by no means perfect, but I'm going to give it a very high grade just simply for scope, for story, for animation, a unique animation style, great voice acting, and just overall absorbing me. If a movie can absorb me after I think I'm going to initially hate it, then it's got me hooked. So I'm giving it an A+. This is fucking great. Check it out. It's on Shudder. Well worth it. Shudder, by the way, I'm not sponsored. Wouldn't mind being sponsored, but I'm not sponsored. But Shudder is a great streaming service for horror, unique and otherwise, and just standard. It's really, really good. A+ from me. Anyway, The Spine of Night, tremendous fucking movie. One of my favorite of the year. Agree, disagree, what I said? Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.